The grand throne room of the Jarl Empire stretched endlessly in all directions, its walls alive with flowing light and energy that shimmered like a living aurora. Alien symbols floated in the air, moving slowly as if breathing, pulsing with quiet power. Towering above the human envoy, the throne itself looked carved from a single piece of obsidian, smooth yet impossibly strong, and decorated with glowing patterns that marked centuries of rulership. Around the room, dozens of nobles and guards stood silently, their forms alien in every possible way. Some had 4 arms, some no visible eyes, some radiated faint energy that made humans feel uneasy even at a distance. They watched the human with curiosity and suspicion, whispering in a language that rolled like thunder and shimmered like light at the same time. In the center of it all stood Princess Valith, the heir of the Jarl Empire. She was a figure of elegance and authority, tall and slender, yet with a presence that made even the largest generals feel small. Her skin was pale violet, her hair flowed like liquid silver, and her eyes glowed with a faint gold that seemed to pierce through anyone who dared meet her gaze. She did not smile. She never needed to. Her reputation had spread across dozens of star systems as someone who could destroy worlds, conquer planets, and command loyalty through fear and awe alone. And yet today, she did something unusual. She did not exude anger, nor curiosity, nor even caution. She exuded interest. Ethan Cole, the human envoy from Earth, felt the weight of every gaze in the room. He was unarmed. Unlike the alien dignitaries around him, he had no enhancements, no power suits, no energy weapons. He wore a simple ceremonial uniform, more for formality than defense. He knew that even one of these aliens could kill him without effort. Every instinct screamed to bow, to apologize, to beg for mercy, to vanish. And yet he stood straight. He looked at the princess not with fear, but with calm, calculated awareness. Princess Valith's voice broke the silence, smooth, sharp, and commanding, like a blade moving through air. "Human, tell me, why do you fear me?" The question was simple, yet it carried a weight that seemed to press on the chest of everyone in the room. The nobles' whispers died instantly. Guards' postures stiffened. Even the air seemed to vibrate with anticipation. Ethan paused. Many would have answered with the obvious, her power, her armies, the technological horrors she commanded. Many would have spoken words to flatter, to survive. But Ethan's answer would be neither safe nor expected. "I do not fear you," he said, his voice calm, steady, and clear enough to reach even the farthest corners of the throne room. Every eye turned toward him, some wide with shock, others narrowing with disbelief. The princess raised an eyebrow, intrigued. She had expected fear, trembling, or at least hesitation. Yet here was a human, standing without flinching, without shrinking. "I do not fear your strength," Ethan continued. "I do not fear your armies, I do not fear death. What I fear is what you cannot see, what you cannot understand, the nature of humanity." Murmurs spread through the nobles. Many glanced at one another, puzzled. Ethan, a human, was speaking as if he held some secret knowledge the Jarl Empire could not comprehend. He took a deep breath and spoke again, louder this time, so that every word echoed in the vast hall. "Humans have faced extinction many times. Plagues, wars, hunger, natural disasters, even our own mistakes have brought us close to the edge. And yet we endure. We survive not because we are the strongest or the fastest, but because we adapt. We learn. We unite when the moment demands it. Our greatest strength is not in domination, but in persistence." The princess tilted her head slightly, an almost imperceptible gesture that indicated interest. "Persistence?" she asked, her voice soft but curious. "Your species is young, fragile, and scattered. You call survival persistence. How quaint." Ethan smiled faintly, knowing that she misunderstood. "It is not quaint, it is lethal. You may see us as fragile now, but fragility can teach lessons that power cannot. When a species is pushed to the brink, when everything is lost, humans change. We do not become predictable. We do not simply submit. We evolve in ways you cannot imagine. That is what I fear, not death, not your weapons, not your armies. I fear what humanity becomes when threatened beyond measure. The room fell silent. Alien whispers were replaced by an almost tangible tension. Guards shifted uneasily. The nobles exchanged glances. Even the air seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the princess to respond. Valith studied him carefully. No human had ever spoken this way in her presence. Most cowered, others begged, some lied. Ethan spoke truth without hesitation, without fear, without flattery. He was dangerous, not with strength but with certainty. You speak as if humanity is beyond fear, Valith said finally, her tone cautious now. Yet here you are, standing alone in my throne room. Do you truly believe your people could face the Jarl Empire and survive? Ethan's gaze did not waver. We would not face your empire alone. We would face it as a species together. And if we were cornered, if everything we love was threatened, then you would see what I mean. Fear is not absence of courage. Fear is a teacher, and humanity has learned well. We fear not what you can do, but what we might be forced to do in return. The princess, golden eyes narrowed. She had conquered countless worlds, crushed empires, and seen species collapse under pressure. Yet something in Ethan's words resonated. It was not arrogance nor ignorance, it was clarity. Humans were not fragile, they were unpredictable. That unpredictability made them dangerous. Ethan continued, pressing the point without raising his voice. Your empire believes that fear is a weapon. We humans know otherwise. Fear teaches, fear sharpens, fear unites. You may think conquest brings control. You are wrong. Conquest can awaken something far stronger than your armies, far smarter than your generals, and far more resilient than your technology. Valith remained silent, her expression unreadable. Yet the tension in the room shifted subtly. Humans were known to be resilient, but no one had ever suggested that their resilience could be a weapon in itself. Ethan's words carried a warning wrapped in calm logic, a warning that humanity could not be contained by conventional means. The human's gaze swept across the room, taking in the towering aliens, the floating light panels, and the obsidian throne. Do not mistake my calm for submission, he said. We do not kneel easily. You may think that fear controls us. It does not. We respect strength, we learn from it, and if necessary, we surpass it. That is why I do not fear you, Princess Valith. I fear what happens if you underestimate us. A hush fell over the hall. Every noble and soldier froze, as if struck by an invisible force. The audacity of a human standing, unarmed, speaking with such certainty, and challenging the assumptions of an empire was unprecedented. Valith finally broke the silence, her voice a whisper that carried authority. You have courage, human. I will grant you that. But courage alone cannot protect your species. What makes you think you can survive against the might of the Jarl Empire? Ethan's eyes remained steady. I do not claim that we will survive without struggle, but history has taught humans that survival is never guaranteed. When faced with overwhelming odds, we find ways to endure. Sometimes through intelligence, sometimes through unity, sometimes through sacrifice. We are not the strongest, but we are persistent. That persistence has toppled greater threats than your empire. That persistence has made humans feared even before you knew our names. Valith's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something almost like respect. She had faced countless rebellions, resistance movements, and uprisings across galaxies, yet none had left such an impression. The humans of Earth were young, untested, and seemingly fragile. And yet, in the eyes of this single envoy, she saw a spark, a dangerous spark. Ethan took a careful step forward, closing the distance without threatening. His voice dropped, not in fear, but in gravity. Your empire controls through fear, through intimidation, through overwhelming power. That works until the species being controlled learns to adapt. And humans learn quickly. You may destroy cities, armies, or ships, but you cannot destroy the human will to survive. And when survival is at stake, humans do not simply fight, they transform. We become something you cannot predict, something you cannot control. That is what I fear. Not you, not your empire, not death. I fear the consequence of forcing humanity into a corner. The throne room was silent now, utterly still. Every whisper had ceased. Even the glowing panels seemed to dim, as if the room itself were listening. The human had spoken not just with courage, but with understanding. He had articulated something the princess had never considered. That fear could be a double-edged sword. It could inspire loyalty, yes, but it could also awaken a species beyond control. Valeth's voice, when it finally came, was quieter than before, yet carried an edge of intrigue. You speak boldly, human. Most would bow or tremble or beg, and yet you stand here, unarmed, speaking as though you hold the future in your hands. Ethan did not flinch. I do not hold the future. I merely speak the truth of my species. You may not understand it now, but if you force us too far, you will see it for yourself. Humanity does not fear domination. We fear what happens when domination fails to break us. And when that moment comes, Princess Valeth, you will understand why humans are not to be underestimated. A long pause followed. The room held its breath. Valeth's eyes never left his. She did not smile, nor did she frown. She simply studied him, a ruler examining something unfamiliar, something potentially dangerous. Finally, she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of conquest and authority. Very well, human, your words have been heard. The Jarl Empire has never encountered a species quite like yours. I will remember this, and so will my advisors. Ethan inclined his head slightly, not in submission but in acknowledgement. He had survived the first trial, speaking the truth to a princess who could have ended him without thought. He had planted a seed of awareness, a seed of doubt in the mind of the future ruler of the Jarl Empire. And as he was escorted from the throne room, the nobles and guards whispered among themselves, stunned and unsettled. A single human had spoken truths that no alien had dared to utter. A single human had reminded them that fear could teach lessons as well as inspire loyalty. Outside the throne room, Ethan exhaled quietly. He knew the path ahead would be difficult. The Jarl Empire was vast and powerful. They had technology, weapons, and armies beyond imagination. Yet he also knew that humanity's greatest strength was not in numbers or tools. It was in adaptability, unity, and persistence. And that strength, carefully nurtured, could change the course of the galaxy. For now, he had survived the throne room. But more importantly, he had made the princess pause, had made the empire reconsider the human species. And that pause, that moment of reflection, might be enough to change the future in ways even the Jarl could not predict. The stars beyond the palace glimmered, distant and indifferent, yet full of possibility. And humanity, small and fragile as it seemed, was ready to show that even in the face of overwhelming power, courage and persistence could alter destiny. The corridors of the Jarl Palace were silent as Ethan Cole was led through them. The air thrummed with faint energy, the walls pulsing softly with alien patterns that seemed alive. The guards around him moved in perfect synchrony, their every step echoing authority and control. Yet Ethan did not flinch. He had learned long ago that fear was useless unless it was paired with understanding. Today, he would rely not on weapons or allies, but on the simple human qualities that had kept his species alive for millennia: reasoning, courage, and patience. Princess Valeth had dismissed the guards outside the throne room but retained them near the outer halls. The princess herself remained inside, alone, contemplating the human's words. Her golden eyes traced the patterns of the room, her mind calculating possibilities. She had conquered dozens of worlds. She had broken entire civilizations. She had faced opponents with fleets larger than the human home planet, Yet something about Ethan unsettled her. His species was young, seemingly weak, yet his words carried a subtle warning that resonated more than threats or rebellion. Humans, she realized, were unpredictable. Alone in the vast hall, Valeth's thoughts circled back to Ethan's assertion. Humans do not fear domination. They fear the consequences of being forced too far. It was an idea she had never considered. The Jarl Empire ruled through absolute control, using fear as both shield and weapon. Yet if humans were forced to the edge, their survival instincts could awaken a force the Empire could not predict. The notion intrigued her. Outside, Ethan was brought to a small waiting chamber, far less grand than the throne room but still decorated with alien elegance. Floating light panels illuminated the room, displaying symbols that shifted constantly, as if reading his presence. Ethan studied them quietly, observing patterns, noticing the subtle ways the room reacted to his motion. Every alien system he had encountered so far relied on logic, hierarchy, and predictable behavior. This room, however, seemed almost aware. He smiled faintly to himself. Even the smallest observation mattered when survival depended on understanding the unknown. He knew the next step was crucial. The princess had dismissed the court, leaving only her advisors behind. He had planted a seed of doubt, but now he needed to show humanity's value not through speeches alone, but through the promise of cleverness, adaptability, and resilience. Words were important, but proof mattered. Valeth returned to him after a time, her movements fluid and silent. She entered the chamber alone, her eyes glowing faintly as she studied the human. "You speak boldly, Ethan Cole," she said, her voice calm, almost musical, yet carrying undeniable authority. "You speak as if humans are not only capable of survival, but of something greater. Explain. Convince me why the Jarl Empire should consider your species more than a curiosity or a minor annoyance." Ethan met her gaze steadily. "Because humans are not easily controlled," he began. "Because when cornered, we learn faster than any other species. We adapt to situations that seem impossible. We find ways to survive even when logic says we should fail. And when survival is at stake, we unite. Individual weaknesses disappear in favor of collective strength. That is why my people should not be underestimated." Valeth listened without interruption. She had conquered countless worlds, seen species break under pressure, and yet she felt a strange fascination. Humans were young, yet in this one individual she sensed the distilled will of an entire species, condensed into clarity and confidence. "You speak of unity and survival," she said softly, "yet your species is scattered across a small planet. You have no fleets capable of challenging the Empire. Your technology is primitive. How can such small, fragile beings hope to survive, let alone influence events in a galaxy ruled by powers like mine?" Ethan leaned forward slightly, his voice calm and measured. "Strength is not always in numbers or tools. It is in the ability to think differently, to act unpredictably, and to adapt in ways others cannot anticipate. You see power as control and fear as obedience. We see danger as opportunity and pressure as a forge. The stronger your empire becomes against us, the more we will learn. The more you push, the faster we adapt. One day, that adaptation may be stronger than any weapon you have ever built." Valeth's expression did not change, but her mind raced. She had ruled with power and strategy, yet the human spoke of a force she could not dominate with conventional means. The more she considered it, the more she understood that she could destroy individual humans easily, but humanity itself was a problem unlike any she had faced. Ethan continued, "We are not reckless, we calculate risks, we prepare. But when survival is threatened, humans act with creativity that borders on chaos. You may find that your methods of control, fear, intimidation, technology will not work the way you expect. You may discover that humans do not bend, they evolve." Valeth stepped closer, intrigued. You suggest that survival itself can be weaponized. Yes, Ethan said. A species that refuses to submit can become stronger than any empire that seeks to dominate it. Humans have faced extinction many times and survived. That is not luck. That is strategy, instinct, and willpower. You cannot understand it unless you have faced it, and even then, you may not recognize the ways we change under pressure. The princess was silent for a long time, her eyes narrowing slightly as she considered him. She had conquered without mercy, yet here was a human explaining why conquest might not bring control. His words were audacious, even dangerous. She felt something she rarely experienced, caution. Your words are bold, human, she said finally, but talk alone cannot change reality. I have conquered worlds with fleets larger than your planet. I have crushed rebellions before they could grow. Why should I believe that your species could withstand the Jarl Empire's might? Ethan's lips curved into a faint, confident smile. Because you have not faced the full measure of humanity. You see individuals, you see weakness, you see small numbers. You do not see resilience that can grow silently, unpredictably over time. You do not see how humans turn survival into strategy, how adversity becomes intelligence, how fear becomes determination. You have conquered worlds with fleets, but have you ever faced a species that fights with its mind as fiercely as its body? Vaelith's posture remained regal, but the slightest tension appeared in her shoulders. She had faced clever opponents before, but humans were different. Their technology was limited, yet their minds worked in ways that sometimes outmaneuvered superior forces. The more she listened, the more she understood that Ethan was not exaggerating. There was a pattern to human resilience, one she had yet to comprehend fully. Ethan continued, pressing the point carefully, not arrogantly but with conviction. I do not underestimate the Jarl Empire. I respect your power, your history, your achievements, but you underestimate the danger of forcing a young species too far. We learn from every failure, adapt to every challenge, and unite under circumstances that others would consider hopeless. That is what makes humans dangerous, not strength, not weapons, but adaptability and will. That is why I fear you. Vaelith's golden eyes widened slightly, but she did not speak immediately. The idea was simple yet profound. The Empire ruled by fear, believing that control was absolute. And yet, humans, small and fragile, could turn the same fear into a weapon against the Empire. She had never encountered this before, a species that grew stronger the more pressure was applied. You speak of the human will as though it is a force beyond comprehension, Vaelith said softly. And yet, here you are, alone, in my presence. Unarmed, speaking to me as an equal, if not more wisely than many of my advisors. Why do you not fear the consequences of your boldness? Ethan looked her directly in the eyes. Because fear does not guide us, it teaches us. I know the risks. I know what the Empire could do to me and to my planet. But I also know that humanity has survived far worse. I trust in my people, in our ability to adapt, to learn, and to act when it matters most. That is why I stand here. That is why I speak truthfully. That is why I do not bow in fear. The princess studied him carefully. His confidence was not arrogance. His words carried insight, a rare clarity that suggested experience and intelligence beyond what she expected from such a small, young species. She realized that he was not merely speaking for himself. He spoke for all humanity, distilling the essence of what made his species unique and formidable in ways the Empire had never considered. Vaelith stepped closer, her gaze never leaving his. You suggest that humanity could survive against an empire like mine, that your people could endure and even thrive when faced with annihilation. And yet, you are here, alone, with nothing but your words. How can you prove it? Ethan's voice was calm but unwavering. Words are the first proof. Survival and action will follow. I cannot show you the full extent of humanity in this room, but I can show you what it means to act with clarity, with courage, and with persistence. If you push us too far, you will witness it firsthand. And when you do, you will understand why humans are not easily controlled, why fear alone cannot bend us, and why we must always be respected, even by those who see themselves as gods." Valeth was silent for a long moment. The silence in the chamber was profound, heavy with thought and reflection. She realized that the human's words were not threats, they were warnings wrapped in reason, logic, and experience. They carried a dangerous promise. If humans were forced beyond their limits, they would respond in ways no empire could predict or contain. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet yet deliberate. "Ethan Cole, human envoy, your words are noted. The Jarl Empire has never encountered a species quite like yours. I will remember what you have said today. Perhaps your species deserves more careful consideration than I previously believed." Ethan inclined his head slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. "Thank you, Princess Valeth. That is all I ask for consideration. Humanity has faced extinction before. We will face challenges again. And when the time comes, we will endure, adapt, and grow stronger." The princess' golden eyes lingered on him, thoughtful and measured. She had conquered empires, yet she felt a rare caution for the first time. She had dismissed countless species, believing them weak and predictable. Humans were different. Not because of raw power, but because of the potential they carried, their adaptability, and the unity that could emerge when pushed to the edge. As Ethan was escorted from the chamber, he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had spoken truth to power. He had survived the throne room. More importantly, he had planted the seeds of awareness in the mind of the princess. A realization that humans were not easily defeated, that fear could not control them, and that persistence, courage, and adaptability were as dangerous as any weapon. The stars outside the palace shimmered like distant fires, vast and indifferent, yet full of possibility. Humanity, small and fragile in appearance, had taken its first step in proving that even against overwhelming power, courage and will could alter the course of history. And somewhere deep within the empire, Princess Valeth pondered the true meaning of fear, control, and respect for a species that refused to bow. The human had spoken. The empire had listened, and the galaxy would never be the same.